And last time we talked about oral history in general. And today we are going to talk about the interview. And I have translated most of the presentation. And it is, in some way, I have made it to try to tell a little about my experience. I'm no academic, but I'm quite a bit experienced with making interviews. So this is very much based on my experience. And if it's okay for you, I just talk and talk and talk till you stop me, and we discuss when you want to discuss.
Yes.
So I think it's very important to make this consent form before we start the interview, because sometimes some people, they like to talk and they like, but when they afterwards, when we have used a lot of hours with work, some of them say that I don't think I want this to be archived, and that means we have been working in vain. In my experience, it's very wise to show the consent form and to discuss it and explain everything and make sure that the interviewee wants to be interviewed and wants the interviewed at least to be archived.
Что первым будет сначала нужно взять согласие на интервью, потому что работа проделана, а человек говорит: о, нет, я передумал. Поэтому вот сначала согласие, а потом запись интервью.
So, I think that's important in advance before the interview. And the second thing, that is when the recording is started, it is very important, this simple thing to say, today it is the 9th, today it's the 8th of June? 9th? 10th? Really?
It's 10th of June.
Oh, I'm getting old so fast. But to tell the date and where the recording is made and who is interviewer and who is the interviewee. Because when you have 100 recordings, and if you cannot find it out just by starting the first minute, this information should be in the recording, and if not, I will guarantee that you will get problems someday. So that's important to remember. I always used to start the interview by saying, today it is the 10th of June. We are in the Memoar studio in Bergen. My name is Bjorn Enes. Please tell your name. Or I used to say, tell who are you? And this question, who are you, that is the best question of every question. Because some people...
Представиться, хто ви, і потім тому сказати, хто ж ви, хай людина сама скаже, хто вона є.
То може це записувати треба, як нам?
Це коли
тебе
зараз навчають брати інтерв'ю.
Так може записувати?
Зараз ось це є, от в презентації. Вони все прийшли. Так, зараз, щоб ти розуміла сама.
Щоб ми не зациклювали, знаєш, писати українською чи російською робити нотатки. Все буде, тобі файл присилають, а тоді вже
ти з ним пропрацюєш,
послухаєш, якщо будуть питання.
Файл, де будуть запитання.
Так, тобі вже прислали з першого заняття, Оленочко. Тобі в тебе вже...
Окей.
Okay? Yep, okay. This picture is just to make us remember that in some way we have three roles during an interview. Very often we are only two people there, but then the third has to work afterwards. And these three people, of course, the most important is the interviewee. This is Norwegian. Now I found the English.
This is an English version.
Yes. And we were here. Of course, the most important person is in English, it's called the interviewee. I like to tell the interviewee for the narrator or the storyteller in some way, because I think it's very important to convince oneself that he is the important person in the interview. Very often when we look at the television, the interviewer is, because the interviewer is the star and the interviewee is just someone passing by. But in oral history, it's absolutely the opposite way. He is the one who is the important person, and those others are just here to make sure that we can collect his story. And so, of course, the interviewer, I like to describe the role of the interviewer in oral history. That is, he or she is an active listener. That means they are listening first and foremost, but they are not passive. They are active, and we're talking a lot more about that. And the third one is the person who's making the log, because the log is very important. We also talked about this last time, because the stories of that man should be found in the archives in 100 years. And then we have to make sure that it is possible to find it. And that's the point with the log. Okay, but in the rest of this, I'm going to talk most about the interviewer and the interviewee, because of course that's it. That's the everyday thing. A little about the logging in the end. This photo I like it very much. It was a very good photographer from Ireland, I think. And I was making the interview with this man, a wonderful man in a small place called Dale in the north, in Sunnfjord. You know the place?
On the way to Voss?
No, it's the same name, but this village has the same name, but it's further north.
Oh, no, I have no idea.
Yeah, but I didn't notice the photographer. Suddenly I noticed the blitz, and then, there is a photographer. but he was, and there was a very good mood in this interview, and therefore it became a very good interview. So I like this picture. The point I want to stress here, that is why are we doing oral history? Of course, we are doing it to put it into the collective memory. I think we should think that Norway, Europe, we have a collective memory, and we have to. Our work is about putting ordinary people's memories and life experience and knowledge into the collective memory, so that it's not only presidents and kings and generals, but also people from below. That's the whole idea with oral history. So the interview is to, of course, we cannot get all the life experience of that man in a 2-hour-long interview. You only got a little bit. But this little bit we can preserve and give it for the future and the present.
Леночка, это проект на годы, на большие годы. То есть сейчас собираюся, я тебе вкратце розкажу інформацію. Давай українською. Зараз збирається інформація не тільки, що робили президенти, що робили королі, то і так відомо. Але те, що було зроблено, те, як жили люди в тяжкі часи. Це буде зберігатися.
Да, це те, що було в першій частині нашої цього курсу. Зараз він розказує, як ми, як люди, які будуть приймати участь в тому, щоб робити інтерв'ю, як ми маємо працювати з тими, у кого ми будемо брати інтерв'ю.
Я це розумію.
Коли
так, зараз треба, він розказує свій експерт.
Ти це маєш робити.
Okay? I think Ingrid Christine is coming with some coffee in a minute. So, and she has been at the bakery and bought some cakes. So, but we just continue till she comes. Okay. The interviewer and the interviewee. I think that when the interviewer and the interviewee has, they know the same things. Like when you interviewed Natalia, it was a better interview than if I should do it, because you know more about how things looks for Natalia. And same thing about you. When you are the translator, I can ask a simple question and you can translate it more. So it becomes a better interview because you know more about the interviewee. So I think that's very good to choose interviewers who share some knowledge or experience or attitudes. But of course there is a danger with that, because when people know too much about something, they can start talking in what we call tribal language. Like they talk so that nobody else understands. If they are specialists in nuclear physics, they talk with a lot of terms that other people does not understand. So because of that, sometimes it's very good to have two interviewers. One specialist who know the tribal language, and one generalist that can stop and say, what does that actually mean? And that is a very good, we have the idea that the best oral history projects is when you have an institution and volunteers working together. Because very often the volunteers, they are specialists, like the interviewees, and the institutions, they are generalists. They know a little about, for instance, seafaring. The people in the Maritime Museum, they know a little, but sailors, they know very much. So a sailor interviewing another sailor, that is a better interview than if a museum who knows a lot about parties in the university, but not so very much about sailing.
So this is the idea actually why we are here. So this who are Flykninger, yes, and interviewer and interviewed.
Yes, and also the maybe it is when like last time when we were 4 people sitting here. I think it was a very interesting interview, and maybe you explained things better because I was here. If all of you were Ukrainians, then it could be more effective. You could tell more in shorter time. But because I was here, you had to translate and you had to explain. You are very clever because you know the Norwegian culture and the Ukrainian culture. So you know when I probably will not understand Natalia if it's only translated. So you can explain. So this 4 people, it's not very effective. It takes a lot of time, but it is very good because the other Norwegians seeing it, they will understand more, and hopefully Ukrainians will it will be good for them too. Should we explain a little extra?
We will take it a little bit later.
Okay, good. I like when there is a good mood in the interview studio, because we are friends. When we collect the stories, for instance, from Ukrainian refugees, we want to preserve and to bring these stories further to the public, and because we think it's important stories, and the mood when we make the interviews, it should be reflecting that we in some way we have the same goal. And if the mood is informal and relaxed and equal and empathic, then I think the interview will be better. This is different from journalism, because very often in journalism, I used to work as a journalist, so I am very interested in the difference between oral history and journalism. And very often, when the journalist make an interview, he is working with an article or a documentary film or something, and he wants answers to some specific questions. And in some way, he is not very interested in what the interviewee means or thinks or have experienced, but he is only interested in those questions he wants to put into the documentary film, for instance. And that makes it very often so that there may be quite tense, the relationship between the interviewer and the interviewee. Not always, but sometimes. And then it's probably a good method to get the specific answers that the journalist wants. But in oral history, we are not looking for specific answers. We are looking for, we want the interviewee, the stories that, like this, I'm sure that there are lots of stories in Lena's head. And some of those stories should be brought to the public and brought to the archives. And that's the point with the interview. And therefore
it's in one word as to awake memory to make your story back. Something that what in our heart was maybe not so much, but we as a people who are going to ask a question.
Yeah.
To formulate this question in a way that people are able to have your memory from a sleep to be awake.
Yes, exactly. That's a very good, because that's what's happened. When we have a good mood and the interviewee starts to tell stories and discovers that, oh, these people are interested in my stories, then it's inspiring for the interviewee. And so one story wakes up the other, and very often people say afterwards that I had forgotten those stories. They say, because the memory was wakened during the. Therefore, it's important to remember that there is only one storyteller, because if Lena tells a story, it reminds me about something I have experienced, and so I would like to tell my story. But in the interview, we have to suppress that wish, because there's only one storyteller in the interview, and that is the active listener. In listening, you can say that I have experienced something similar that I can tell you afterwards. But this is a way to inspire the teller, the interviewee, when the interviewee understands that this is really interesting because he is remembering something similar, and then it inspires the interviewee to tell even more. So, but remember, when you are interviewing, don't start a discussion. Don't try to tell, to exchange stories. You are an active listener, and that is your role. You get it?
Ваша задача, так.
Девочки, давайте потом. Давайте
Ти сказала, що будеш перекладати, що я сижу, я нічого не розумію. Ти казала, що на лекції будеш перекладати. А що ж
Ну, я ж думала, що це буде по-норськ, а так я вирішила, що ви ж всі розумієте англійський, то чого ж я буду вже тоді перекладати?
Це на інтерв'ю перекладається все, точно.
Да, тут же ми ж якби
Це ж навчання
получили, да, це ми якби получили.
навчання так.
як тобі.
Просто Стела мені казала що колись, що мені просто треба сходити взяти інтерв'ю. Я просто може щось не зрозуміла.
This also a very, it's not technically very good, but this was an old lady in the north of Norway. She worked in the post office, and she's 90 years old or something. So she started when she was 15. And she has been in the post office all this time. And that means that she started in a very small village where there was a shop and there was a telegraph and there was a post office and everything. And they knew everybody who came there. So when somebody got a Christmas card, of course they read it. And everybody knew that this man has got a Christmas card from an aunt in... And then all this happened with she moved into a bigger city and the post office grew, and I think this is when she tells when they had to start asking people about identification papers. When they came to there was people got their money from the wages and everything from the post office. So every Thursday they had to go to the bank with a big bag with lots of money. And people came and said, "I'm going to pick up my so-and-so," and they said, "Okay, here you are." And then the boss said, "Now you have to start asking people about identification papers." And people was angry. "Why, you know me? Don't you know me?" "Yeah, but I have to ask you." "No, I..." And this she told about a lady. She said, "Ah, you need a picture of me. Yeah, but look here." And she found an old photograph and said, "Here, you see, this is me." This is, I call it the expression when the interview goes magic. Mm-hmm. Because there are so many stories in people, and sometimes you experience that it's just like a flow or a stream. She started telling, and the one story woke memories of the other, and it was not necessary to ask one single question. She was telling and telling and telling and telling all the time, and that is really magic. And you know, history for young people, when they see an interview like that, they don't have to read history books about the post-development because she puts stories to everything. So that, yeah, it's really interesting. So these are some methods to try to make this magic, and I think the most important thing is to ask open questions. Open-ended questions. Never ask for a date or a fact or a number or things like that. They are not. Oral history is not the method to find out how many refugees comes from Ukraine. That is other methods. Tell your stories when you escaped. That is oral history. And you don't know in advance what a person are going to tell, because that's why you make the interview. You will try to get some stories that you haven't from before. So that means that the more specific questions you make, the more you reduce the room for the interviewee to tell. Free association narratives. I wondered what is it in English. So I have searched quite a lot in Google to find this expression, and I think that is a very good. We in Norwegian we call it fri fortelling, free storytelling. something like that in Norwegian. But this is a more scientific expression, I think, and I think it's a very good expression. And that is when the stories are really genuine. You're not when you are in the school and you ask the pupils about what is in the book, you may get more correct answers because they have read the book and hopefully it's correct what is in the book. But the free storytelling, that is genuine. That is really source material for the future. So open-ended questions is the best advice. Just as like this first question, who are you? And then some people that's the only question they need, and then they can talk for 2 hours. And then it will be a good interview. So I used to say before that the best advice to an interviewer, that is to keep his mouth. Just to ask this first question, who are you? And then never open the mouth anymore. But I think that is a little too simple. So, but the other important advice, that is, when you are an interviewer, you are a little afraid. I usually, because you want there are so many things can go wrong, so you are a little worried. And that means that if the interviewee suddenly stops talking, then it's very easy to get, I have to ask a question, because it's suddenly silent. But you have to oppress that feeling too, I think, because when the interviewee stops talking, it may be just because the memories are working in the head. He or she is waiting for the story to be ready for being told. The silence can be very productive, and it's you shouldn't be afraid of silence.
I understand. Story on the head back, like on our laptop archive.
Yeah.
And it needs some time for unpack this archive.
Exactly. Exactly. And the further down in the archive cellar it is, the more time it needs to come up. And if the interviewer are too nervous and seems to have a hurry, then you will stop this searching process in the computer. So that's important. And this we already talked about, facts and details. Mm-hmm. If you are looking for facts and details, you should rather go to the library or use other methods and oral history. And also this true and untrue, because that is also better to use other methods. If oral history, it's a good method to get her truth. And she may have lived all her life and misunderstood something. She may think the world is flat. And her reflections are based on that the world is flat and not round. And it's very foolish to start a discussion with a lady like that if the world is round or flat. Because that has nothing to... Then you will lose her stories. So to me, it's been more and more important that the question of what is true and what is not true, that is for other methods. Okay? Then there is another important thing, or actually it's the same things that because when you prepare an interview, I always used to think that I have to ask about this, and then I write the question, and then probably she or he answers so and so, and then I will ask so, and so you write a lot of questions. And we have an old fairy tale in Norway about this deaf man. He cannot hear anything, and then somebody explains him that the lensman, that is the old-fashioned police, he will come, and so he is going to, and he sits thinking, the police is coming. I have to be polite, and I have to answer what he is asking, but I cannot hear what he's asking. So he plans the whole conversation. And then the police comes and he asks completely other questions, but get the answers the deaf man has planned. It's really funny. It's very well known so it's
På-norsk, døve.
God dag, mann, økseskaft. Good morning, man. Axe, økseskaft, you know axe.
Wow.
This wooden part of the axe, because the deaf man thinks that because he is working with his axe. Mm-hmm. No, he's working with making a new this wooden part of the axe, and so he thinks that probably when the police comes, he will ask what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. So I will. That is økseskaft. Mm-hmm. He probably comes and says, "What are you doing, man?" And then I will answer økseskaft. But the police, he doesn't ask about that. He asks, "Good morning, man," and the man says, "Økseskaft." So if you say this, it is nowadays it's a part of the Norwegian language. If somebody says to you, you're talking about something, and I say, "God dag, mann, økseskaft," that means I think you are talking about something completely different from what actually we should talk about. So that's very well to know when you know Norwegian. And the deaf man, he thinks that the next question will be about the old boat, because he has a very old boat that is destroyed, and it's very old, and so he gives a short description of how bad the conditions of the old boat is. But then the police asks him about how is your wife?
She needs to be repaired.
So I always think of this story when I discover myself that I am planning too detailed questions. I must not do the same. But keywords is useful, because just like this list is, I have tried to think about some important things that we should. I should make sure that we have talked about, and even maybe detail it a little more. That's good preparation. But I think it's important. Do not sit with this paper and look at the paper during the interview, because if you are looking to the paper instead of looking to the interviewee, then you signal that you are not very much interested in what the interviewee tells. You are more interested in what you have written on the paper. So therefore I say, prepare, write these keywords, put the paper together, put it in the pocket. And then when you are almost finished with the interview, take it up and check if you have talked about all these things or if there is something you have forgotten. That's a very good advice, I think. And when we are making a series, like now we have the plan to interview Ukrainian refugees and people about the war in Ukraine for a whole year. That means we want to make a lot of interviews. Then it may be a very good idea to have this list, and each time when we make a new interview, we expand the list a little. There is something we never thought about, but it should be on the list. So this, because we have a project, and in particular, if we succeed this idea about making a theater performance, then it is important to go back into all this material and find like Natalia's story, for instance, about this man with the water, who transported water after the electricity was gone and the shop was closed and there was shelling and bombing and everything, and still this man came with the water to people. This is really interesting and moving. And it is interesting if more people have similar stories. So, because this could be put together as a small piece of the theater performance. But then we have to find it. And so if we have a list like this and we put these words into the log, then it will be easy to find it. But, so that's Is it difficult, Lena?
Ну, мені, напевно, краще було б, щоб і Норськ, або Букмон, щоб слухати норвезьку, і завчасно б я більше розуміла, Юля перекладала. Так я погано розумію трошки, ну нічого.
Ти буде змога все це перечитати, перекласти, яку ти хочеш, і зрозуміти, що то
Ну,
тебе
правильно. Ну,
додасться.
зараз просто в мене школа, а потім буде школа кожен день. Я просто знаковіться, чи
Це
буду.
тільки 2 дні.